By the early 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan no longer operated as a hidden terror group. It operated as a religion. To sustain that authority, its leaders produced a printed, sacred text and gave it a deliberate name, the KLORAN. The choice was intentional. Klan leadership understood that religious books command obedience in a way laws do not. Ritual law replaces legal law. During nighttime ceremonies, hooded men gathered around burning crosses while passages were read aloud, ranks were affirmed, punishments outlined, and recruits placed their hands on the book and swore loyalty unto death. One former Klansman later recalled an officer explaining it plainly. Other peoples have their holy books. This is ours. The KLORAN did not teach mercy or equality. It taught hierarchy, racial supremacy, and submission. Faith was no longer personal. It was weaponized. At the center of this system stood David Curtis Stevenson, born September 21st, 1891. A man who understood that belief, once ritualized, could replace the Constitution itself. By the mid-1920s, Stevenson had risen to Grand Dragon of Indiana, commanding an estimated 250,000 Klansmen at the movement's peak. Judges, police chiefs, prosecutors, and legislators owed their positions to the Klan's backing. Stevenson carried the KLORAN as both symbol and shield, using its language to justify entitlement and immunity. He boasted openly that elected officials answered to him before the law, once telling a journalist, without irony, "I am the law." No one challenged him. Under Klan dominance, oaths mattered more than statutes. What gave Stevenson confidence was not recklessness, but structure. The KLORAN laid out ranks, rituals, and moral exemptions that placed Klansmen above outsiders. Within its framework, authority flowed downward from divine sanction, not public consent. To disobey was not just disloyalty, it was spiritual betrayal. The rituals reinforced that hierarchy repeatedly. Robes donned, passwords exchanged, symbols displayed. The same passages read again and again until obedience felt natural. The system worked because it replaced accountability with belonging, and for a time, it produced exactly what it promised: control without consequence. Living entirely outside that world was Madge Oberholzer, born in 1896, a quiet, deeply religious woman working for Indiana's Department of Public Instruction. Friends described her as careful, principled, and trusting of institutions. She believed authority existed to protect people, not consume them. She believed rules mattered. She believed, like many Americans did, that power was constrained by law. That belief placed her directly in the path of a man who believed the opposite. On March 16, 1925, when Stevenson summoned her under the pretense of discussing funding for an educational program, Madge boarded a train believing she was entering a professional meeting. As the train pulled away from Indianapolis, Stevenson leaned toward her and spoke calmly, without threat or urgency. "No one will stop me." It was not bravado, it was certainty, rooted in a book, a movement, and a system that had convinced him he was ordained.
I assure you this is...
As the train gathered speed on March 16, 1925, Madge Oberholzer understood that the meeting she believed she was attending did not exist. David Curtis Stevenson positioned himself between her and the exits, signaling staff away with the ease of a man accustomed to instant compliance. When Madge protested, witnesses later recalled Stevenson smiling and telling her, "You don't understand how things work." The words carried no anger. They didn't need to. Authority, as he practiced it, required no raised voice. He escorted her into a private compartment and began assaulting her as the train moved north, invoking his control repeatedly, explaining that judges, police, and politicians answered to him first. The confidence was not performative. It was learned behavior, reinforced by ritual, rank, and a movement that treated law as optional. By the time the train reached Hammond, Indiana, Madge was injured, drugged, and unable to escape. Stevenson arranged her transport to his home, where the confinement continued for days. The violence escalated with intention rather than impulse. He bit her legs so severely that flesh tore open, wounds that doctors would later describe as unlike anything they had seen. Infection set in quickly. Fever followed. Throughout it all, Stevenson spoke as if protection were guaranteed, repeating variations of the same assurance. No one would believe her, no one would act, no one would interfere. In Indiana at that moment, those were not empty words. The Ku Klux Klan's reach extended into prosecutors' offices, police departments, courtrooms. The belief system worked because it was visible everywhere and challenged nowhere. What Stevenson did not account for was decision under certainty of death. Knowing her condition was worsening and understanding that she might not survive, Madge made a calculated choice. She swallowed mercuric chloride tablets, not to die immediately, but but to force medical attention and ensure her condition would be documented by professionals outside Stevenson's control. When a nurse later asked why she had done it, Madge spoke, but clearly. She needed to live long enough to tell someone what had happened. The poison began destroying her kidneys, but it also achieved its purpose. Doctors were forced to treat her, record her injuries, and keep her conscious. Stevenson, believing she would die quietly and take the story with her, allowed her to return home. He assumed the system would absorb the damage. He had relied on that assumption his entire career. Within days, Madge dictated a detailed statement to authorities. She named Stevenson directly. She described the confinement, the assaults, the threats, and most importantly, the certainty with which he claimed immunity through the Ku Klux Klan. Prosecutors would later say the statement did more than accuse a man. It documented a structure, how authority was exercised, how fear replaced law, how ritualized belief translated into real-world power. As investigators began to act on her testimony, the first cracks appeared. Officials who had once deferred hesitated. The machinery that had moved smoothly under unquestioned authority slowed. The system had not been challenged by force or ideology, but by a record, spoken clearly, repeatedly, and under oath. By late March 1925, Madge Oberholzer's condition had become irreversible. The bite wounds inflicted by David Curtis Stevenson were severely infected, and the mercuric chloride she had ingested to force medical attention was shutting down her kidneys. Doctors told her family she would not survive. Madge understood the same thing and focused on what time remained. She asked repeatedly for the prosecutor, whispering, insisting she could still speak. Over several days, drifting in and out of consciousness, she dictated a sworn statement that was meticulous in detail. Dates, locations, names, the sequence of assaults, the threats, and the certainty with which Stevenson invoked Klan protection. The statement was signed and witnessed. It entered the legal record while she was still alive. On April 15, 1925, at the age of 28, Madge Oberholzer died. Her testimony did not die with her. The effect was immediate. Stevenson was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, an extraordinary step in a state where the Ku Klux Klan had dominated courts and legislatures only months earlier. During the trial, prosecutors read Madge's words aloud in court, forcing jurors to hear the structure of power as she experienced it, how obedience was assumed, how authority was enforced, how immunity was claimed. Stevenson's defense relied on influence rather than innocence, operating under the expectation that loyalty would hold. Instead, exposure accelerated abandonment. Politicians who had once appeared openly at Klan events denied affiliation. Officials who owed their positions to Klan backing distanced themselves overnight. The rituals and oaths that had promised protection became liabilities once they were spoken in daylight. On November 14, 1925, Stevenson was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The verdict marked a turning point, not because a man was punished, but because a system lost credibility. Membership collapsed across Indiana and then nationally as fear evaporated. The Klan ran, once treated as sacred law, was reclassified as evidence. Stevenson, enraged by what he saw as betrayal, retaliated by releasing lists of corrupt politicians and Klan allies to the press, accelerating the unraveling he had helped construct. Power that had depended on secrecy could not survive documentation. Authority built on ritual could not withstand testimony. What remained was sequence. Belief asserted, obedience enforced, exposure introduced, collapse following in public view.